Welcome to episode 44 of Book Nerd Paradise, where we get to know an author as they tell us one of their favorite quotes, read from their work, pose a trivia question, and give away a book or two. Hi, I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson Epic Fantasy Adventure Series. Today I'm very excited because we're going to focus on the launch of Book 5 of the Andy Smithson series, Vision of the Griffin's Heart, which is coming out Wednesday. It's up on Amazon right now, and you can pre-order it, or you can just go ahead on Wednesday and actually buy the book. The paperback is also available, so you can go ahead. If you're more of a paperback reader, that version is also available. With 2016 beginning, so a lot of things start new at the beginning of the year. And this year, what I decided was I was going to put together what can be called a street team. So some of you may not be familiar with what a street team is, but basically, I'm making the offer, and I'm only gonna make it once because I'm looking for people who are passionate about the Andy Smithson series. If you've read it, if you've loved it, if you're passionate about sharing it with your friends, family, coworkers, whatever it might be, I'd like to extend an invitation to you to join my street team. There's going to be stuff that you'll get as part of the street team that nobody else is going to have available. In fact, right now, for instance, like there's bookmarks that I'm making available to my street team that aren't available to anybody else right now. So good stuff. All you need to do is go over to my website at lrwlee.com, and there's a link at the top that says street team, and it will give you all the information. So if this is for you, great. If not, no problem. But anyway, I make that offer to you. For those of you who aren't familiar with the specifics of the series, I wanted to set up kind of the story arc for the series and then give you a synopsis of Book 5. In Book 1, Blast of the Dragon's Fury, Andy is whisked from his home in Lake Hills, Texas, and finds himself in Umaldi, a land that he has never heard of. And he finds out he's the chosen one to break a curse that's over 500 years old. He needs to do this by collecting several ingredients for a curse-breaking potion, the first of which is the scale of a red dragon. Book 2, he has to collect venom from a vicious serpent. 3, he has to overcome the problems involved with getting a horn from a unicorn, which unicorns historically don't talk to men or boys because men have gone off to war and shed blood. Therefore, typically they will only talk to virgin girls. So he has to overcome that problem. Book 4, he has to get the tail feather of a phoenix, which only resurrect every 500 years. And then Book 5, he now is tasked with getting the talon of a griffin, which they don't particularly like humans because humans have stolen their eggs and tried to take their gold or silver. So underneath all this, there's other things happening. So there's Imogenia, who is the king's sister, who he killed when she was only 17. He was 15 because he was power hungry. He wanted to be the heir to the throne and not his older sister. And this is why the whole curse came to be on the land to begin with, that Andy is now tasked with breaking. So Imogenia goes from furious at the very beginning, and there's the whole story arc with how she's changing and growing and developing throughout the series from the afterlife. Going consistently with that is Abaddon. He's the evil northern monarch of Fadassian, and he is bent on taking over the land of Umaldi based upon what he's endured at their hands from his earliest upbringings. So all these forces combine together throughout the series, and much what you're going to find in Book 5 is they're beginning to come together, and there's an awful lot of conflict that's resulting when you have evil at a point where it can exert itself, and then what opportunities to defend and defeat does Andy and quote unquote the good guys have in order to overcome. And I wanted to give you a synopsis of Book 5. So I'm just going to read it off the back. The evil Abaddon king of Umaldi's northern neighbor Hadessian, steps up his attacks on Andy and his mother, Queen Emily, at home in Lake Hills, Texas, over the next year, unnerving Andy as he overhears speculation that Methuselah may no longer be able to defeat this nemesis. But why? Over a year later, Andy arrives back in Umaldi to discover tensions running high as more and more citizens are turned into Zolt. But there's more going on than meets the eye. For the effectiveness of Abaddon's strikes against them reveal he's getting inside information. Could there be a spy in their midst? Despite the chaos, Andy receives a clue for the fifth ingredient needed for the curse-breaking potion, the Claw of a Griffin. There's one not so small problem, however. Griffins guard the land of Carta's gold and silver mines and don't take kindly to humans. While away in Carta, fears over an imminent attack materialize, and Abaddon, with his new mage, Fidus, enact a campaign of terror no one could have imagined. So I always include a portion of the show with favorite quotes. And in this particular episode, I want to share a few quotes that I just really like from this book. You know, sometimes you're writing and you get an inspiration, and you know, it's like, wow, I wrote that? That's amazing, right? It's like you amaze yourself at times with some of the stuff that your brain puts together. So a few of the quotes that I would like to share include the following. It says, "It's okay to hurt and cry. It's how we know we love." And Mom is speaking that to Andy when he's going through a really difficult time. But I think we as humans, we hurt, and as a result, we cry. But I think if that's the end of it, then it may or may not have any additional meaning to it. But, you know, to link it to the fact that, yeah, we hurt and we cry because we love, right? If we weren't able to love, we certainly wouldn't hurt or cry. So I just thought that was just one of the quotes that came to me one day as I was writing. And I'm like, wow, you know what? That's really kind of cool. One of the others that I particularly love, so Queen Emily, or Mom, right? She's speaking and says, "We can only do our best to prepare for the future and hope for wisdom to meet its challenges." And I have to say, you know, isn't that the truth? It's like we don't control the future. And I think we all understand that, but I don't think we have to look at the future with despair by any means. We just have to do our best to prepare now and every day, right? So that with the preparation, hopefully we will have the wisdom that it takes to meet whatever the new challenges are that we're gonna face. But I particularly like those quotes for this series. I mean, there's certainly a plethora of others as well, but I just pulled those out because I think they're very meaningful and helpful for every one of us. One of the things we normally do as part of an episode is to do a book giveaway. So I am going to be giving away 2 different prizes to whoever leaves a comment in the notes below. So the first prize, I will be giving away a paperback, a signed paperback of book 5. That's for one person. And then for another winner, I will give away the complete ebook series. So there's 2 things you could win this week. So make sure that you leave a comment in the comment section below, and you'll be good to go. All right. I thought today, since we're focused on the launch of book 5, Vision of the Griffin's Heart, that I'd read a little bit more than perhaps some of the authors do. And this particular scene that I'm going to read from, it reveals a question that I have been building since book 1. And that is the question about why are there Zolt that appear in the dungeons and then just disappear. If you're familiar with the series, you've seen Andy watch Zolt show up in the dungeon, or heard the Stone Knights mention the fact that there's been a plethora of Zolt appear. They just kind of amble through the dungeon and then they disappear. And it's kind of been like, what's that about, right? Well, Andy's about to find out what that's about, okay? So here we go. The stout silhouette of a creature with frog-like eyes, a bulbous nose, and long arms waddled past Andy's hideaway. He waited until the Zolt rounded the corner into the large open space from which Andy had just come, then slipped out and followed on sneaker-clad tiptoes. He reached the corner and peered around. The Vulturegeist stood in the corner to the right, staring at the wall. The sound of stone pulling across stone told Andy the man had engaged a hidden door, and seconds later, Andy barely cleared the opening as it closed. Thanks to torchlight coming from the end of the passage, Andy recognized the room where he had overheard Abaddon's conversation with the minion's father 2 years earlier. He passed by, focused on other pursuits. The Zolt continued forward, oblivious to its tail, and turned left, stopping at the end of the passage 30 feet away. It searched for and finally depressed a hidden stone in the wall and again waited for the door to permit entry. The Vulture Man looked behind, and Andy ducked back. Shuffling feet and stone grating against stone told Andy to hurry. He dove and rolled, nearly becoming the innards of a sandwich as the door thudded shut. He found himself in an entry. 4 feet ahead rose a section of stone wall from floor to ceiling, concealing the contents of the space. Andy peeked around the barrier. The chamber was dimly lit by 4 torches, one on each wall, and was empty except for 3 objects. A white stone block measuring 3 feet square stood in the center. Next to it was a rectangular stone of similar material, about 2 feet taller but only half as wide, reminding Andy of a lanky older brother. Upon the taller stone sat a square crystal the size of Andy's fist. It glowed and pulsed the colors of the spectrum, sending a rainbow about the room. The Zolt stood before the crystal and wrung its hands. As if finally reaching a decision, it nodded once, mounted the smaller block, then reached for the crystal in slow motion. The instant its hands cradled the glowing rock, a shriek pierced the stillness and ricocheted off the walls. A blinding flash of white exploded. Andy ducked for cover as black dots filled his vision. Seemingly over before it started, silence returned as if trying to hide a secret. Andy risked a peek. With black dots still bouncing in his sight, only the stone blocks and crystal remained. The pulsing rainbow had turned into a steady crimson, making the room look as though blood stained every wall. Andy's breath caught, and he steadied himself against the barrier. He ran a finger against the rock and exhaled as he determined the red was not blood. He shuffled toward the carved pedestal, trepidation biting his gut. Methuselah, he thought. Instantly, he felt the weight of his faithful companion in his hand. Andy stopped 3 feet before the glowing rock and extended the blade. The red light focused, and a beam of energy leapt toward the sword. As soon as it connected, it sent a surge of power coursing through Andy's body. His arms began to tremble and his legs wobbled. This is worse than defending against Abaddon's first mage at Giant's Ring. The thought zapped his brain, giving clarity to the sensation. It's like when I accidentally touched the live barbed wire fencing at Grandpa Smithson's ranch. Focus, Andy demanded. He slowly raised Methuselah over his head as the shaking in his extremities intensified. It took every ounce of strength, but Andy brought the blade crashing down on the middle of the crystal. Energy burst forth and launched him across the room. He crashed into the wall and dropped to the floor. The red beam continued to pummel Methuselah, and he dropped the sword. The blade retracted as the hilt clanked to the floor. I've got to destroy this thing. Andy grabbed Methuselah once more. The blade extended only inches before a strand of red energy again connected, forbidding further progress. His body began convulsing, but he spurred himself on. Kill it! Kill it! Pushing himself up with the wall, Andy tottered toward the beacon. Without hesitation, he swiped at the crystal and felt himself go airborne. The beam wrenched Methuselah free and flung it into the entry where it clattered against the stone. Andy fell to the floor in a heap. And you know what? I'm going to leave it right there. Yes, there's a whole lot more that happens after this, so make sure you get yourself a copy.
My trivia question was, what inspired Neil Gaiman to write the Graveyard Book? And his answer was, and I quote, he was inspired by one image, my infant son Michael, on his tricycle, pedaling through the graveyard across the road in the sunshine. And from that initial idea, he spent about 20 years developing the book to what we see today.
Test your GIQ. GIQ, your Griffin intelligence quota, of course. I want to direct your attention over to the website. On that, the blog piece has a post that's called Test Your GIQ. So there you can have a lot of fun in terms of, there's 8 questions that you can answer and see how much you know about Griffins, because you're going to learn a whole lot about Griffins in this book. And it could just be a fun way to see how much you know. So, and then be sure to click links at the bottom to tell everybody how much you know, okay? I hope you've had fun today, as I've given you some sneak peek of some of the little pieces of Book 5, Vision of the Griffin's Heart.
Click the button to subscribe to the Book Nerd Paradise YouTube channel so you don't miss upcoming authors, giveaways, and answers to trivia questions.
I look forward to seeing you again next episode.